The settlement of the Czechoslovakian problem, which has now been achieved, is, in my view, only the prelude to a larger settlement in which all Europe may find peace. This morning, I had another talk with the German Chancellor, Herr Hitler. And here is the paper which bears his name upon it as well as mine. Some of you perhaps have already heard what it contains, but I would just like to read it to you. We, the German Führer and Chancellor, and the British Prime Minister have had a further meeting today and are agreed in recognizing that the question of Anglo-German relations is of the first importance for the two countries and for Europe. We regard the agreement signed last night and the Anglo-German naval agreement as symbolic of the desire of our two peoples never to go to war with one another again.
Alexander the Great remarked that the peoples of Asia were slaves because they had not learned to pronounce the word no. Let that not be the epitaph of the English-speaking people. We must arm. Britain must arm. America must arm. We shall no doubt arm. Britain, casting away the habits of centuries, will decree national service for her citizens. The belief that we have now at last got far enough ahead of barbarism to control it and to avert it. If only we realize what is afoot and make up our minds in good time. Is this a call to war? Does anyone pretend that preparations for resistance against aggression amounts to the unleashing of war?
In hidden corners of the world, violent religious extremists were plotting ways to advance their radical aims and their grim ideology. We have given Special Operations Command the lead role in the global war against the terrorists. We must be determined and we must be relentless to do our duty to protect the American people from harm.
Saw on Tuesday completely transforms the problem. We've got to think anew about this. The policies of the last 20 years, whether you think they were carried out effectively or ineffectively, obviously don't work. This is not going to be a problem solved by locking somebody up and putting them in jail. It's not going to be solved by some limited military action. It's going to take, as the President has said and Secretary Rumsfeld has said, a broad and sustained campaign against the terrorist networks. Impressive and can be made more impressive. But we're also talking about our economic strength. We're talking about our diplomatic strength. We're talking, I think the most important weapon we have is the political will of this country. And I think we'll find, once again, as has happened before in history, that evil people, because of the way they think, misread our system as one that's weak, that can't take casualties, can't take bloodletting, can't carry out a sustained operation. Hitler made that mistake. The Japanese made that mistake. It looks like the people on Tuesday made that mistake.
Of course,
of surprises, even if few are as dramatic or as memorable as Pearl Harbor. Surprise happens so often that it's surprising that we're still surprised by it. Here has gotten whole governments, sometimes whole societies, into trouble. At the beginning of the last century, Stanford University argued that war in Europe, though much threatened, would never come. The bankers, he said, will not find the money for such a fight. The industries will not maintain it. The statesmen cannot. There will be no general war. Unfortunately for him, he made that prediction in 1913.
What fascism means to all of us, for those who have studied history, and you have the Defense Secretary who refers to those who might oppose the war as to the Neville Chamberlains of the world, to the appeasers. Those are strong words.
appeasement is, again, these analogies are all limited, but I don't think it's ridiculous to say that there are people, as there were people who were public-spirited and decent people in the 30s who thought the way to deal with this threat was to pull back or not to pick a fight here or here or here. And I tend to think in this case, too, that that will be a mistake.
An argument, whether it's Bret Stephens, who wrote the interim nuclear agreement signed in Geneva on Sunday by Iran, the six big powers, has many of the flaws of Munich, or Daniel Pipes over at the National Review Online calling the interim deal with Iran, quote, one of those rare occasions when comparison with Munich in 1938 is valid. But of course, neoconservatives.
This is a sham from beginning to end. It's the worst deal since Munich.
Bin Laden and his terrorist allies have made their intentions as clear as Lenin and Hitler before them. The question is, will we listen?
We've got Chavez in Venezuela with a lot of oil money. He's a person who was elected legally, just as Adolf Hitler was elected legally.
I've often used that precise analogy of Hitler and Mein Kampf as a reason why we should take threatening rhetoric seriously, particularly in the case of terrorism and Saddam Hussein.
If every enemy the U.S. faces is...
Let me just ask, I take it you think it's a mistake to take bin Laden's rhetoric seriously or Saddam Hussein's rhetoric seriously. That's the implication of your introduction here.
No, I just don't think they're...
What we are talking about is standing together and speaking with one voice in opposition to a clear violation of a red line the world has defended for nearly 100 years. So this is our Munich moment. This is our chance to join together and pursue accountability over appeasement. We in the United States know, and our French partners know, that this is not the time to be silent spectators to slaughter. This is not the time to send a message where doing nothing is far more risky than responding. This is not the time to allow a dictator unfettered use of some of the most heinous weapons on earth. This is the time to pursue a targeted and limited but clear and effective response that holds dictators like Bashar Assad responsible for the atrocities that they commit. And I know I speak for President Obama when I say that we are exceedingly grateful to have France by our side in the effort to uphold the global red line on chemical weapons and to protect our shared sense of decency for generations that follow.